Oh, football gods, please, please, you cannot do this to me. You cannot do this to me. Do not allow the Colts to be frauds now. Not now. Not after the way this season has started. Don't you understand, football gods? We have suffered as Colts fans. We have suffered. We've suffered enough. I cannot take another late season collapse out of this football team. Oh, my goodness. In the name of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, please, please do not let it be so. Okay. So, where do I even start? I mean, I don't want to overreact to what it is that we're seeing out of the Indianapolis Colts right now. I tend not to be the overreaction type of guy, but at the same time, as someone who wants to be objective in their analysis of the team, I certainly don't want to underreact to what it is that we're seeing either. And while the Colts are not officially at a full-on collapse yet, we aren't quite yet in pure misery and dismay as Colts fans. We are certainly well on our way. Like, we're in very, very clear danger of that becoming the case. The Colts have now lost 3 of their last 4 games. They've lost 2 games straight. The only win they've had in their past 4 games was against the Falcons team that they beat in overtime in a game they could have easily lost. That's not to completely discredit the win, but that Falcons game wasn't exactly the Colts' best performance all around, right? Like, that was the first time we felt like, okay, we're starting to see a little bit of chinks in the armor here from the Indianapolis Colts, and it just hasn't stopped. And now here we are in a division in the AFC South that has officially become a complete crapshoot, right? And the Colts had every opportunity to pull away with this division. They had a handy lead about a month or so ago, but now it's a complete crapshoot, this division. Now, if we're to be glass half full, the Colts still 8-4. They have everything in front of them. When you look at the games where the offense has come up short, it's all been against very good defenses. And it's not like the Colts have been completely inept, right? They've just gone from historically good to around average as an offense. And a lot of the losses, including this one against the Texans that we'll get into, really were decided by a few moments, a few plays, as is often the case in the NFL. So as the Colts, from a record perspective, you're still tied for first place with the Jaguars, who you play this upcoming week. And one more time, you have another game against the Houston Texans. So there's a whole lot of opportunity to right the ship here, is my point, right? Like, it's not over yet for the Indianapolis Colts. So we can't sit here and do all of that. But if you're to be glass half empty, which in fairness, a lot of the fan base is, you do look at the fact that, sure, you're playing Jacksonville, and that's an opportunity, but you're in Jacksonville, a place that you have not won since the year 2014, a year in which the Jaguars were 3-13, not 8-4. They had Gus Bradley as their head coach, and I think Blaine Gabbert was playing freaking quarterback for the team at the time. I mean, we as Colts fans have seen all types of heartbreaking performances in Jacksonville, so there's that side of things. You look at the fact that Sauce Gardner, who was supposed to put this team over the top defensively, we just traded 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell for this guy. He went down with calf injury. The good news is it doesn't seem like it was an Achilles thing. We're going to get an MRI probably today as I record this. We haven't quite gotten it yet, but he's going to miss some time regardless of the fact, so that's no good news. Of course, you look at the fact that as the Colts built up that 7-0 record and now an 8-4 record, the games we've had against quality football teams in that stretch really don't look great from a win-loss perspective. You have a loss against the Rams. Yes, you have a win against the Broncos that was assisted by a leverage call, something that, in all fairness, I've never seen in my life, a leverage call and a field goal outside of that game. Yes, you have a win against the Chargers, who are a little banged up, but they're a pretty solid team nonetheless. But you have a loss against the Steelers, a loss against the Chiefs, now a loss against the Texans. Sure, all of these games were close. The Colts were in all of those games. They at least look like a team that could win those games if they were given another opportunity. So it's not like the Colts are so far away. But to say that, oh, they're just right there, that's what we always do, right? Like, that's not any different than any Colts team we've seen in recent years. This one just got off to a much better head start, a head start that we can't completely discount, because it's not like the Colts were just playing pretty darn good. They were playing historically good on the offensive side of the football. So that's still in there somewhere. But the question is, are they closer to that or closer to what we've been seeing recently? I don't know. Like, the truth likely lies somewhere in between, but I do think I can speak for all of Colts Nation, when I say even the most optimistic of us, like myself, the PTSD that we have developed as fans of this team from a recent history of just coming up short when it mattered the most, that PTSD is starting to trigger. And I can't even say that anyone is wrong for being a doomer right now. I do think it's a little premature because what I also can say is that we're not quite there yet. We're not there yet. You look at the 2006 Colts. They started 9-0. They finished 12-4, and obviously that season ended very, very well for that football team, right? So I will at least encourage everyone, right, to do this because if and when we get to the point where this thing turns into a collapse, we'll have plenty of time to be sad. We're going to have plenty of time to be miserable. So for now, let's at least try to stay even keeled in the moment, and we can move on from there. But yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about the game. Now we're going to talk about my biggest takeaways from this game, and then we'll move on with our day, our week, and that'll be that. But before we get into that, you know what it is? I got to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Behind the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show. Go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe. If you want to be a part of the journey, we're on our way to 5,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. So if you keep coming back, enjoying the show, perhaps it's your first time here, and you don't mind what it is that you're hearing, hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode again. Of course, audio listeners, leave a five-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying what it is that we're doing over here. Of course, be civil in the comment section with one another. Easier said than done when we're all emotional as we are right now. But again, we're all on the same team. We are rooting for the Colts, although sometimes I think some of you are rooting against the Colts, to be 100% honest with you. Like, I find that people are much more vocal when the Colts are bad than when they're good, right? Like, you have these people who literally are negative about the Colts nonstop all the time, right? And then all of a sudden the Colts do good. You don't hear nothing out of them. But then the second things go bad, they come back out of the woodworks with a vengeance, right? So, like, it's very convenient to be able to kind of sit behind the keyboard, fall back when things you aren't right. Like, no one here is Nostradamus, right? No one here is Coltstradamus. I like to call myself Coltstradamus sometimes. They don't call me that for nothing. But ultimately, you know, it's easy to sit there and after a few weeks of bad play, come out and say, oh, it's all over. And then if they pick things up again, you can kind of sit back and pretend you never said it, right? But that's neither here nor there. Don't want to get into a whole diatribe about that. I want to get back into talking about kind of this game and what I took away from it. Because, of course, the result is one thing. But ultimately, we're in a stretch of the season where it is far more like you do have to win games, but we are much more. We have to make the playoffs. We have to win games, but it is kind of about the performance, right? We're trying to just look into it and say, is this something that can turn around? Like, what is it that we're looking at? Sure, they're losing games, but is all hope lost? Or do we have a chance here? That's ultimately why we're trying to nitpick the details here. And I do want to start on the offensive side of the football because I think when you look at the offense as a whole, in this game. Again, number one, not to make an excuse, that is a great Texans defense. I don't think the offense was all that bad in this one. I mean, the Texans defense, to be fair, held the Rams, who have been completely unstoppable, to 14, right? They held the Buccaneers to 19. They held the Bills to 19. They held the 49ers to 15. My point is that no offense looks their absolute best against the Houston Texans. They're widely regarded as one of, if not the best units in the league. And of course, they're getting hot at the right time as a team. So with all of that said, my only point is that I didn't exactly see a Shane Steichen problem here in the offense for the Indianapolis Colts. I thought overall he called a pretty good game, if I'm to be 100% honest with you. I thought if you look at that 4th and 1 that they had at the Houston 9, that they tried that QB sneak with, you know, with how the game was going on both sides of the football, or rather how the game was going for both offenses, I may have personally kicked the field goal there, and that's not hindsight talking. Even in the moment, I'm watching my TV and I'm like, ooh, that's kind of tough. Would I take the points here? I don't know. But ultimately, I can see the case made in either direction in that specific moment, assuming that you know the one that I'm talking about. So nothing crazy there. And I don't hate the call either. That little motion into a QB sneak from your tight end is something that I've seen the Packers do a bunch with Tucker Kraft when he was healthy and do it successfully. And I think if you asked a lot of Colts fans if you'd like a QB sneak from Tyler Warren on 4th and 1, I think a lot of people would have said yes. Ultimately, that play would have gotten the yardage. If you watch the replay, it did get the yardage, but Warren fumbled the snap, right? In fact, in my opinion, when you do look at the shortcomings of the offense in this game specifically, is much more a game where the players failed the coaches than the other way around. That's just my personal opinion. Like, yes, you have the refs and what they did late in this one, and it was egregious. Of course, that 3rd and 15 pass interference call against Kenny Moore was absolutely brutal from the referees, right? But you do also have to look to the fact that it's not like the Colts didn't have their opportunities to win this football game, right? If you're just being fair and objective, and you have that pass interference that was called on that throw to Alec Pierce down the field. Was that a catchable football? Was it not? I think you could make the case it wasn't, right? So if you're a Texans fan, I think you could look at that call and say, I'm not so sure about that pass interference call. My point in all of that is ultimately, if you're coming off a loss, you're looking for things that you could control coming off of that loss that affected the outcome of the game, not things that are outside of your control like the referees, right? At least that's what a winner would do. There's always this talk about being okay with mediocrity and having a winning mentality versus having a losing mentality. If you are to blame a loss on someone else, like the referees, that does kind of put you in a spot where you can no longer improve, right? Because if the outcome was in someone else's control, it means you have no control over what it is that you can do to improve going forward. That, in my opinion, is a losing mentality, right? So if we're going to sit here and talk about this game, I'm not going to blame it on the refs. The Colts had their chances, right? I think you look at the Tyler Warren fumbled snap on the QB sneak, right? Shane Steichen, I thought, dialed up a fine play right there. You have the missed PAT from Michael Badgley, who may or may not have a job come next week. And then you have that late drop from Josh Downs on 3rd down that could have been a 1st down, but it would have at least been 3rd and short. That's way different than being in 3rd and 10, or was it would have been 4th and short? Or what point being is that was a huge drop from Josh Downs. Obviously, he was sensational all day, so you don't want to kill him, but ultimately that's money time, and he dropped what was a wide open out, right? Those 3 plays that I just mentioned, coupled with the 3rd and 15 call in Houston's favor, 4 plays, 4 moments, those decided the outcome of this game, in my personal opinion. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's not like the Colts were so far off here. But if you do notice, none of that has to do with the coaching staff as well. Like, that's just me. I thought the players let down the coaches in this game on a personal level. Another major takeaway that stays on the offensive side of the ball is Daniel Jones' leg injury. That thing is real. I was listening to Alex Smith talk about this injury. And of course, he's known for snapping his leg. Well, he's known for a lot of things. He was a good quarterback in this league, but really a big moment in his career was when he snapped the leg with the Washington Commanders. I think it might have been the Washington football team at the time. I'm not sure what they were called, but he said that he had this same injury as Jones, not that he snapped his leg, but he said he's played with a fractured fibula before, and he tried to play through it twice and couldn't even finish the game. So I do think that says a lot about the toughness of Daniel Jones, his commitment to the team, his commitment to winning, his commitment to setting the tone and kind of saying, hey, we're going to come out here, we're going to be tough, and we're going to try to win at all costs. I think that's kind of the polar opposite of what we'd seen from Anthony Richardson in his career. So I do want to give Daniel Jones credit where it's due on that front. He did not turn it over. I thought he threw the ball pretty well throughout the day, but he didn't really do anything special either, right? But all of the people to point at in this game, of all of the people to point at, I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. I will say this, though. The offense started the game off exactly how they ended the game against the Chiefs, which was poorly. Very poorly, right? There was a moment where the Colts offense had 6 straight 3-and-outs when you were looking at the end of the Chiefs game and the start of this game. Like, they just felt completely flat, completely anemic early in this game. Now, they slowly settled into things, but you do look at a guy in Daniel Jones, his mobility is clearly compromised right now. And you saw it last week. You saw it this week. You see it in the play calling as well, right? They aren't doing the QB sneaks with him anymore. Ultimately, that was something that was a huge part of this offense in short yardage situations early in the year. Daniel Jones is great at the QB sneak historically, not just with the Colts. He's one of the better in this league when you talk about conversions. They're not running that with him anymore. It's not because they don't think it's effective. It's because with his injury, they don't think it's prudent. They aren't designing plays where he's on the move out of the pocket like they once were. So you can tell ultimately from a play calling perspective, they're pretty handcuffed by this injury. And then ultimately, as a result of that, Daniel Jones in of himself is pretty handcuffed by this injury. But ultimately, they feel good enough that if it's between Daniel Jones with a bum leg and Riley Leonard, that Daniel Jones gives them a better chance to win. And they're probably right in that regard. The problem, of course, though, with that leg injury is mobility is a major part of what Daniel Jones does. It was a major part of his success early in this season. Any success he had with the Giants, albeit limited, had to do with that mobility, right? So Sure, he can operate in the pocket. He does operate in the pocket. He can hit throws from the pocket. He is accurate. He generally makes good decisions. But the question becomes, is he good enough to produce without his legs assisting in that process, without getting him out on the move, without him having to be able to create? If he just has to stand there like a statue and throw, like Tom Brady or something like that, is he good enough to do that? Ultimately, that's what we are in the middle of learning. And so far, it doesn't look all that great from that perspective, if I'm to be 100% honest with you, at least from the perspective of, injecting a little bit of life into the offense. Again, it's not that he played miserable, but you do kind of look and say, man, an offense goes as the quarterback goes. And right now, there's just no life in this offense. We always talk about a little bit of the, right? A little bit of the nasty on the defensive side of the ball. But I think right now, this offense needs a little bit of the, right? And Daniel Jones, without his leg, is not providing that for the Indianapolis Colts at the moment. And that's definitely a major worry, because the energy, when your offense is as good as the Colts offense was playing, the entire team feeds off that energy. And right now, there's just no juice to this offense. And I do think it has a lot to do with the combination of teams starting to adjust as the season went on. You couple that with the leg injury coming up for a quarterback that does rely on his mobility to some extent, and you do have a recipe for a serious regression from the offense, which is exactly what we've seen. But all of that said, I would like to be fair. The story's still being written for Daniel Jones, right? Like, we're not there yet, as I said at the start of the episode. So I do want to encourage everyone to at least let that story play out, right? It's right in front of us. Another month of action, and you can react however you want. But I will say, for right now, he needs to be better, sure, but I don't think he was bad in that one. It just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And ultimately, we're going to see how this goes on, right? If Josh Downs catches that pass on third down, that out, we could be having an entirely different discussion. And it's just the margin for error is so small in this league, particularly when you're playing against good teams, divisional teams. And where the Colts are at right now is just, they're just not getting it done late. And that's ultimately what it is. These games are right in front of them, but they're doing what we've seen out of the Colts for so many years. And sure, they've bought enough of a cushion, but that cushion is quickly, let me not say slowly, very quickly starting to dwindle. And we'll just see how all of that plays out. And then my final takeaway from this game, major one, Charvarius Ward. I don't want to go too far here because I don't want to say something that's not true. But for those of you following the channel, I had done a film study on Xavier Howard against the Rams. And my biggest takeaway from watching Xavier Howard live in action, right, when I was watching that game, before the film, after the fact, I said to myself, man, Xavier Howard just does not look like he wants to play football out there right now. Like, it looks like he's not hitting guys. He doesn't want contact, anything like that. Like, Xavier Howard looks like a guy that wants to be anywhere else but on the field. That's what I thought. And not only was that accurate, it was so accurate that he literally retired like a day or two later, right? So, like, what I was seeing was exactly what was going on. I don't want anyone to panic, but Charvarius Ward, while not quite as extreme as Xavier Howard on this front, I am seeing some signs that perhaps this is a guy with those two concussions. I'm not sure how eager right now Charvarius Ward is to engage in a level of contact. Like, I could argue that Charvarius Ward, much like Xavier Howard early in the year, looks like a guy, and I'm going to watch the film again to make sure I'm not overreacting here. Charvarius Ward looks like a guy that didn't want to play football against the Houston Texans. I'm going to just say it outright. He looked like perhaps, and mind you, that doesn't have to be some sort of completely mopey, completely down in the dumps. The NFL is so violent, the level of tenacity that you need, if you even have just a sliver of hesitation, a sliver of indecision when you're going in to make these hits, it's going to show up in a big way. And I think Charvarius Ward right now is in a spot where, keep in mind the story last year with the 49ers coming into this year. He lost his love of the game with the 49ers and wanted to come to the Colts and kind of felt rejuvenated on that front. But you get those two injuries, you kind of have some of his feelings of the past, and hell, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't feel great. We'll see if it gets better as time goes on here in the season. But Charvarius Ward, some red flags starting to pop up for me in terms of his eagerness to go out there and do a little bit of the, right? A little bit of the dirty work on the defensive side of the football. He right now seems like a guy who doesn't want the hits that come with the NFL. And when you're in that spot, it's not a good place to be on the defensive side of the football because your job is to administer those hits, right? And he's been a guy who's been known for sure tackling, so I'm a little worried about Charvarius Ward. I'm not ready to jump off the ledge just yet. I'm not panicking yet on Charvarius Ward. But I will tell you, this week against the Texans, much like I saw with Xavier Howard against the Los Angeles Rams, I saw a guy in Charvarius Ward who looked like he wasn't 100% sure he wanted to be out there playing football. You take that as you may. So that's going on. Sauce Gardner's hurt. Is the cornerback position of the Indianapolis Colts cursed? I mean, is nothing sacred at that position? Like, we just can't have nice things, can we? And what did I say was the biggest risk that the Colts took when they traded for Sauce Gardner? It wasn't what they gave up for Sauce Gardner, because I believe in his ability to be a spectacular player for this team as time goes on. You don't get lockdown corners often in this league, particularly in the passing, in a league where passing is so prominent. The biggest risk they took was the trust and the gamble that they took on Daniel Jones when they made that trade. But when he gets injured, gosh, it makes it look a hell of a lot worse, right? So, yeah, that's where we're at. Really not a whole lot to be super happy about today as Colts fans, if we're 100% honest with you. But let's let the story play out, people. And I'll see you soon. We'll talk soon. But that was an episode. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. And as always, go Colts.